Sure. Before I start shouting out, I was gonna ask you questions.
They have like yeah. Yeah.
If it was like another 2 seconds, I was gonna go and hold down that side. Like RT. I feel like that could go very badly.
One, two, cool.
Am I in ref? Can you see if I'm in the camera? Am I in the camera there? Where am I? Here?
Yep,
Where's my ref?
still in it, and your face is out.
Alright, so the ref sensor here. Already go. Well, cool. We'll let everyone get settled down, some food. Sorry for the delay, the delivery was a little late, so thank you. Just get your food, relax, don't worry. We'll probably start like 10 minutes after the time, so get some food. Were there more chairs in that room or no? Can folks on the stream hear me right now? Test. 1, 2, 1, 2. Test. Hey, what up, guys? Test. Cool. So we're live. So hopefully, no, should be good. One, two, two.
Did you ask like Amazon to join the event today?
Huh? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you shared, they shared out?
Oh yeah, we did.
Cool, we got a lot of people. So hopefully it's the
Yeah,
last.
like so many folks from the call.
Yeah, that's good. The poll's good. The poll's close.
Yeah,
See
sure.
the office I was talking about? The poll's done. That's okay. New year.
This question though, I mentioned that application is open, right?
Well, did you bring me on it? Did you apply?
No, actually our club got approved.
What's up? Great. Do it. Well, you reach out to me, but I'll try to reach out to we'll figure it out. We know how to get keys from the mall. Someone wants to start paying taxes. And I said, but look, get opportunities for this. You don't have to get it. Doesn't have to always be. In fact, you appreciate that. Right? Starting with the mall. Like, I was actually thinking of calls. I came and talked to him about when he came to by next year.
making the fat guy squeeze through. Alright, so chat here. Yeah. Where is it? So I don't know.
Just watch, there's a chat, you'll see it scroll, and then that's it. And then the camera's live, so go for it.
So normally during the start of events, I play like music. This is actually like generative AI music right now. Like this isn't anyone's music. I just kind of put some instruments there and it just makes music. It's actually pretty nifty. So it was actually at I.O., so we'll talk about it today. But like I figured it'd be kind of cool, you know, a little Gemini stuff to talk. So why not, right? Carry on. We'll start in probably like 5-10 minutes. We'll let folks kind of go through the wave. Yeah.
I just want to add some stuff in.
What should I add?
Oh, I found it.
Fuzz guitar?
It says fuzz guitar is one of the options.
You can type whatever you want.
I know.
Here, do you want to type it in? But yeah, admin and see if he'll talk to you guys. Because he's the one that every time I see him, I Really? Oh, you would take him to these events? I've only seen him twice. 3 times at 3 different events. And every time he's here, he always comes and asks me about starting the GBSC chapter at the and I've given him the steps and everything to do it. So see him. That's a good question. I got a pass down. I didn't say
I would say you'll probably hear
yeah, right?
That's what I was telling you about when you put the hand down, when you get it. Yeah, so you started, you're like a senior high level. And you find someone next year has it down to you, and then you run the program. It's like a program. Just bring that
So that's where you sit.
achievement? Unsettling. I don't know. Like unsettling.
I like that.
That's so funny.
Oh, sure.
It's kind of like a free bird, but that's definitely not exactly. This is the computer. What's up?
Huh?
Generative AI making this music. You can type whatever you want, it'll just function the beat in, like it's cool. You can do like drums, trumpet, guitar. Test. So I'll put the slide back up. This is kind of while I see the last few people kind of getting their slices of pizza. So we'll just get started for the sake of time. Apologies, a few things kind of went back to back. So
Dan, you want to come up there and manage? So, first of which, thank you so much for TAG for hosting us today. Again, this is our second time here, so thank you again. Well, we've been here a few times, but the second time in the past month, so thank you. I believe we still are looking for some open roles in terms of UI teams, some SREs, and stuff like that. So check out the career site. Check out that career site if you're looking for a role potentially. So here in Chicago, beautiful office, great location, meetups and pizza. So yeah, the clicker does click. All right, I forgot. I'll just kick it off. So make sure if you haven't already, follow us on Twitter, X. I think Elon's still running the poll. I don't know if he'll rename it back. I don't know. Whatever. Follow us there. There's our.
I got the X.com now.
We do have X.com now? Oh, see, so maybe X is sticking around. However you found us, whether you're on Meetup or you're on the Bevy site, be sure to follow us there. You're going to get the most up-to-date info. You can reach out to us there if you have any discussion or any topics you want to talk about. Just general code of conduct. Just be excellent to one another. At the end of the day, we're a diverse community, so just be nice to one another. We're here to learn, we're here to grow. Everyone's gonna have different skill levels. Some of us are amazing rock stars who know everything. Some of us are getting started. This is our first meetup meeting a bunch of peers. So just be cool to one another and remember that you're all in one spot at one point in your career. So if you see something, say something. So just harassment, just if you feel uncomfortable at all, find one of us. I'm Joel.
I'm Dan.
I'm Amanda.
So find one of us three. We're here to make sure everyone has a good time.
I'll gladly rat out Joel.
And the last one is just practicing saying yes and to each other. So basically what this means is kind of add to the conversation. If you hear something great, say, oh, that's great. And this is also something. And this is also something. Kind of build and foster that conversation. In doing that, we build a community. And building a community, we build some great things. So this is actually cool. We used to have only one room. Now we have two. Maybe we'll have three next time. Let's see if we'll do it. So, I don't know if this is going to click. How do I click with this? Can you click the button?
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is.
What does this remind you of? Schrodinger's cat. Wow. Okay. When all of these tools come together, it's a powerful combination.
It's amazing.
That's amazing.
It's an entire suite of different kind of possibilities.
Hi, I'm Gemini. What neighborhood do you think I'm in? This appears to be the King's Cross area of London.
Together, we're creating a new era.
Cool. So, this is go to the next slide. Cool. With that, welcome to Google I/O Extended 2024 here in Chicago. Show of hands, how many of you folks, well, actually, who attended live in person? Raise your hand. Cool. Nice. We got a nice little crowd here. How many of you watched virtually? Cool. Good crowd. Good crowd. And then, who here doesn't know what Google I/O is at all? It's like, oh, I've heard of it. I see a lot of excitement. Anyone here new? Does anyone know? Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So, just kind of giving you a summary. Google I/O is essentially Google's like flagship development conference every year. They typically host things like Flutter, web with Angular, and a few other topics. This year, cloud had a presence as well as AI. Cloud Next, I think we had an event a few months ago, is more focused on cloud. So things like business solutions, enterprise. So the more fun one is Google I/O, the more businessy one is Google Cloud Next. So yeah. So today, we're actually going to have, and this is an outdated slide. I'm not sure why this is an update. Sorry, Amanda. This one, okay. Oh, I know what happened. Sorry. So to have Jorge here, but unfortunately he had a family emergency. So graciously, we had Amanda step up and be on our panel today. So today we are actually welcomed by a few great panelists. I'll just start with left to right. We have Amanda Rossi. She is our GDG organizer who also attended. So thank you, Amanda, for stepping in last minute. Charles Maxson. Charles, you here? Do you want to come on up and just maybe introduce yourself? In fact, while we wait for Charles to come up, Amanda, you just want to introduce yourself real quick, just who you are.
Yeah, hey, I'm Amanda. I'm a GDG organizer and a women tech maker. I'm also a web developer at Ragtags Inc. and very excited to share what I've learned from Google.io.
Awesome. So I'm Charles Maxson. I'm a developer advocate for Google. Been at Google for about 12 years. I uniquely focus on Workspace as a development platform, so we'll talk about that a little bit later on, hopefully. I just want to thank and extend both the tag and Joel and team for actually inviting us. It's super awesome. And also want to thank everybody for showing up. This is a great turnout.
It's a great turnout. It's awesome. Thanks, Charles. We're also welcomed with JC Escalante. That's JC, you here? Yep, cool. Want to introduce yourself to the crowd?
Thanks. Hey everyone, I'm JC. I work for Ipsos, a French market research company. Happy to meet all of you.
Cool. And last but not least, we have Wayne Vanderbilt, Director of Engineering at Tag. Want to introduce yourself to the crowd?
Hi guys, Wayne Vanderbilt, Director here at Tag. Spent a lot of time with our Angular and our Flutter apps, so I'm excited to talk about those.
Alrighty, so I have two mics, but the last time I tried to do two mics on one of these things, it didn't work. So we're gonna try. I think this one should work. Cool. So you guys all want to take a seat, and we'll just get started. So everyone get comfortable when you hold the mic, please ask the question. So.
Tallest one, we put her on the tallest one.
I'll convert this to slides. Displays. Range. Don't want to mirror. Stop mirroring. I want to bring this somewhere on the screen. What? Oh, nope, wrong one. You get hold of, yeah. There we go. Slideshow. Cool. And I will do this. Cool. So, remember the part where I said the mic stopped working? Cool, there we go. So, just to get started, I think everyone here either had the opportunity to either attend live at I.O. or be in the crowd or be virtually. Just going down the list, starting with Amanda, what was the coolest thing that you saw at I.O. that you liked? It could be anything from attack to this environment. I don't know. What do you think?
Gosh, there's so many things, honestly. Going to Google.io, it's like AI this, AI that, my mind's gonna blow. Definitely some cool things was Project Astra, and I'm sure we'll dig deeper into that, but very cool AI tool that Google has been working on, can basically do almost anything, from using a camera to pointing at objects to drawing to typing. It's crazy what it can do. Definitely also really liked Gemini as well. That's also really cool. And how they've incorporated it into so many different things. Pretty crazy.
Charles, how about you?
So I'm a little biased because I actually gave a session. And I actually gave a session with one of the colleagues of mine. Her name is Kara Ireland. And halfway through the session, she just said to everybody, not everything requires AI. And she got a lot of blank stares in the audience. A lot of folks like, what? How can you say that at this conference?
Pull off the stage, pull off the stage.
but it's true. I think a lot of folks obviously have caught the buzz and they see all the greatness that you can do with AI, but you have to actually apply the solution pragmatically. That said, if you ask me my favorite thing, it was how naturally we're infusing AI into everything. And it's accessible and it's reachable. We actually did a couple of demos, and I'd love for you to check out the session if folks are interested. I'll post the link later. But we show you literally simply with a handful of line of code how you can actually take cells out of a spreadsheet or an image out of slides and actually do AI on it right within inside of Workspace with literally less than 35 lines of code. So it's so super accessible. The other thing I liked, and Julie kind of said this earlier, you know, this I/O has been a developer event for years, but cloud has always kind of been on the outside looking in. And by the way, Workspace is a cloud product. A lot of folks don't realize that sometimes, but actually I'm on the cloud team. And for the first time, we actually had equal billing. Normally, Next was where you would see a lot of our offerings, but there was a lot of interest. We actually had our own segment, our own booth, our own programming track, everything. So the neat thing is that cloud is now really kind of considered part of the core developer experience at Google. So it's not just you know, on the side for business folks anymore. It's actually pretty more well received. So those are some of the highlights for me. There's a ton of others, but I don't know if I'll hog the mic.
Well, I feel like you've spoken up for both of us. Yeah, I was really interested to see all of the integrations with some of the tools, like you said, very seamless, especially with the Code Assist in the Android Studio and some of the other places, having the plugins for Visual Studio Code, and how easily it helped hacks like myself quickly get some decent code out there and stop my immediate browse. Like, it cut down on my Stack Overflow browsing by like.
I think I was sitting next to Wayne when that like Code Assist part came up. He had a light bulb in his head just went bing, and he was like, "Oh, I can do this too." So it's great. Yeah, it was awesome.
So for me, just because of my background, and I come from the structured data analytics world, what caught my eye was at the last 2 minutes of the developer keynote, Google showed a prototype called Data Science Agent, and to me, it has been the closest thing I've seen out there of how generative AI can break, or how generative AI can create assisted data analysis kind of experiences for people who might not be as comfortable writing Python or analyzing large data sets. That demo was great. If you have not tried that, I invite you to test it. It's very high quality and it aligns very well with some of the objectives that I have for my company. So that's one thing. And the other thing that caught my eye was Gemini Flash. So at least the type of work that I'm doing, the way I describe the work that I'm doing is we're going through this honeymoon phase of just deploy generative AI everywhere. And we're trying to maximize quality regardless of the cost. Nobody's keeping an eye on the cost for now. But I expect that to change very rapidly. And I expect our CFO to start asking questions like, okay, where is the ROI? And I expect that in the next couple of months we will be optimizing costs, and that's where Gemini Flash will play a big role because we can keep the high reasoning and high quality output of Gemini at a fraction of the cost. So those two things were what caught my eye.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're definitely in the rub AI on everything, and we're definitely using bazookas to probably solve very small problems as we're seeing. But I mean, I think the most interesting thing to take away from this was, you know, I think each of you mentioned in your own respective ways how easy and accessible all this is becoming, right? And it's for every part of the stack, whether you're a developer, whether you're someone in the business line, just looking at spreadsheets. There's a lot of things that we're really seeing AI being applied to and actually having practical use cases, which is great. I was actually going to show the quick demo. Hopefully this goes back. Astra. You mentioned it, so I kind of want to show the chat agents. If you could, Charles, I'm going to actually show the chat agents and maybe kind of we could talk a little bit about this. So hopefully this plays.
As you can see, the teammate has his very own account, and we can go ahead and give it a name. Do something fun like Chip. Chip's been given a specific job role with a set of descriptions on how to be helpful to the team. You see that here? And some of the jobs are to monitor and track projects.
Sorry. So one thing, I guess I was going to try and pause it so we can actually show
As
this.
you can see, the teammate has his very own account, and we can go ahead and give it a name. Do something fun like.
So what he's actually doing is he's making a team member, like a virtual team member, inside of Workspace. Is that correct, Charles? Sorry, I don't know if you have to. I'm passing the mic to Charles.
On your right.
Yeah, I think he's actually making like a virtual like workspace agent. Obviously, I don't think this is fully out there yet. I think this is kind of a vision as to what can be done, right, with this technology when we start talking about AI. Oh, come on. I promise
As you can see, Teammate has his very own account, and we can go ahead and give it a name, do something fun like
We'll just let him walk through this.
Chip. Chip's been given a specific job role with a set of descriptions on how to be helpful for the team. See that here? And some of the jobs are to monitor and track projects, we've listed a few out, to organize information and provide context, and a few more things. Now that we've configured our virtual teammate, let's go ahead and see Chip in action. To do that, I'll switch us over here to Google Chat. First, when planning for an event like I.O., we have a ton of chat rooms for various purposes. Luckily for me, Chip is in all of them. To quickly catch up, I might ask a question like, anyone know if our I.O. storyboards are approved? Because we've instructed Chip to track this project, Chip searches across all the conversations and knows to respond with an answer. There it is. Simple, but very helpful. Now, as the team adds Chip to more group chats, or files, or email threads, Chip builds a collective memory of our work together. Let's look at an example. To show you, I'll switch over to a different room. How about Project Sapphire over here? And here we are discussing a product release coming up, and as usual, many pieces are still in flight, so I can go ahead and ask, are we on track for launch? Chip gets to work not only searching through everything it has access to, but also synthesizing what's found, and coming back with an up-to-date response. There it is. A clear timeline, a nice summary, and notice even in this first message here, Chip flags a potential issue the team should be aware of. Because we're a group space, everyone can follow along, anyone can jump in at any time. As you see, someone just did, asking Chip to help create a doc to help address the issue. A task like this could take me hours, dozens of hours. Chip can get it all done in just a few minutes.
So obviously a lot of work probably goes into this. And it's a lot, no, it's not live. I mean, this is at the end of the day, things that where we can apply generative AI, asking those questions. I mean, how many of us are in Teams or Slack or Discord chats, right? And I don't know about y'all, but like I lose track of that. Like especially if you have a very active community, you're gonna be like, who said what last Thursday? And what was the agreement that came out of this meeting? Imagine if you had something that could provide you context to kind of give you that information back. Now, obviously, that's something that is not live yet. But Charles, do you see people in the field doing something similar? How are you seeing the world kind of evolving around generative AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I mean, that demo is pretty close to live. In fact, we've actually built one. My team's actually built one very similarly to it. The first part, real quick question I have for you. Show of hands, how many folks actually use Google Chat as the primary collab driver? You can raise your hands high. It's only a handful. Okay, I have to be fair, Slack. All right, put your hands down. And then Teams? Oh, wow. All right, so cool. Ordained by the. Yeah, okay. So a couple things. So obviously, first of all, for the folks that raised their hand for chat, thank you. Chat's obviously included inside of Workspace. I will admit we were a little behind on getting some things ready. One of the things we didn't have until recently is an API. Everything you saw Chip do was made available because we've now released an API that allows you to have access to all chats as data. And so one of the great things that you heard in the demo is the agent had access to everything it was granted access to automatically, and then was simply using Gemini to synthesize that content, ask those questions. So it's not technically that advanced. What enabled it is the fact that now we have a full platform with the security controls and hackles to allow and grant access to that agent to run that data off and do some things with it. And so as Joel mentioned, there are threads that go on forever. The fact that you can just now, with 1 million tokens, soon to be 2 million tokens, basically take an entire chat space and synthesize it with questions that you ask naturally using natural language. And so I think the sky's the limit for it. I think if you're a workspace user, I think it will actually help us make chat way more legitimate that people want to consider it, because it wasn't as feature rich when we first, I'm just being honest, wasn't a feature when we first launched it, but it's definitely caught up with the ability to allow developers to create content on it, just like you saw with that demo.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, building on that, so obviously chat and workspace is great, but I know a number of you folks are either students or you know, don't use it, use Drive. You know, I use Drive all the time. What are some examples of like some of these Gemini things kind of going out to the general public, even if you don't have, let's say, an enterprise deal? Do you see like opportunities where Gemini and all these things are kind of being implemented in that stack?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things, first of all, chat's also available publicly.
Yeah.
Right, with a Gmail account. Ironically, weirdly, and I don't agree with this, you can actually use chat applications like Chip in a consumer account. You can't build them though without a workspace account, which is kind of weird. But now the API actually extends to a consumer account, which means a similar implementation. If someone builds it, they can do it. There are also, we have a Google Workspace marketplace where third parties or anybody who's interested, you don't have to be a professional organization, you could be an individual developer. You can create your own solutions, publish them to the marketplace, and reach the nearly 3 billion users that Google Workspace and tools like Gmail and Drive and Chat have access to. So there's a lot of things. In fact, our entire programming language is available to the free SKU, to the consumer SKU. So anybody here, how many folks here are Workspace users? I know you have a lot of Microsoft fans. Okay, so quite a few. You have full access to the APIs of all the Workspace. And the cool thing, there's no charge for it. So you can actually develop against it and create applications without actually incurring any cost whatsoever. Now, if you call Gemini with it, well, there will be a cost. I'd love to get back to your point in a second. But the neat thing is you can explore and build on things like that without the AI component, all for free.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually one of the cool things is that there's a model of kind of adoption, right? I mean, I remember during my time in school, I would use Drive for like day-to-day work and day-to-day tasks. And then now that I'm in the enterprise space, I can see there's a lot of adoption with things like Chat and Drive and all these things kind of going. So it's kind of building an actual portfolio.
Just one more thing before I forget, sorry. There's actually a tool called MIO, M-I-O. They actually have the ability for organizations to do interop between Teams, Slack, and Chat. So if you have development shops and your folks that are mixed, I saw some folks raise their hand twice. Some folks have two tools. You now can have interop, which is again made available because we've opened up the APIs for it, so you can share with other folks.
Yeah, I guess in closing, with all the stuff in Workspace, we talked about the general consumer. We also talked about enterprise customers. Is there anything like you would say, obviously the API, anything else you would say is like a takeaway from I/O from someone like, hey, these are probably one or two things you should consider or look at? Is there anything under your radar?
I'd say the number one thing I see right now is how we've made Gemini into the product. So at I/O we showed how you can actually use Gemini from the side panel. So I can go right inside any of the Google applications and actually start interrogating information about the content in my document or in my chat or in my Gmail. Do AI on that, even other files in Drive and compare a file to another file. So do all that as a user without having to do any context switching or going out to another application. You can do it right in place. On top of that, the big announcement was kind of secretly quiet, is the fact that we're actually enhancing those to be workflows where you can do multiple steps. So for example, I want to reach into my CRM and I want to go out and find customers of a certain type and then kick off a mail to them and then set up a calendar meeting with them. You can build these little mini workflows along, kind of like Zaps, if you will, like Zapier. You can actually create those and do those type of steps as well too. So it's not just using AI, but it's using AI in a sense of workflows. That'll be super cool.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I think where we're seeing the most applications out of generative AI is typically like in large enterprise in terms of their organizing their data or trying to make sense of large blobs of data. I mean, having worked in enterprise here, I mean, we knows because we work together, but there's data silos exist, and hopefully with things like this can summarize
what is really in these environments, what's in that data, what are the files that are available to you. So there's some interesting things for sure. Going to switch gears, so Amanda briefly mentioned Project Astra. So this is actually pretty cool, and I'm still convinced that another AI company saw the keynote before the keynote went live, because it was very well timed as to the announcements of some other things. But let's kind of watch this demo of, hopefully, if I can pronounce it over there, Project Astra. So this is still not something that's, again, you can download live now, but very much a concept of what you can do with things in AI. So it's like a two-part demo.
Okay, let's do some tests. Tell me when you see something that makes sound.
I see a speaker, which makes sound.
What is that part of the speaker called?
That is the tweeter. It produces high-frequency sounds.
Give me a creative alliteration about these.
Creative crayons color cheerfully. They certainly craft colorful creations.
What does that part of the code do?
This code defines encryption and decryption functions. It seems to use AES-CBC encryption to encode and decode data based on a key and an initialization vector, ID.
That's all right. What neighborhood do you think I'm in?
This appears to be the King's Cross area of London. It is known for its railway station and transportation connections.
Do you remember where you saw my glasses?
Yes, I do. The glasses were on the desk near a red apple.
That's kind of cool. This is actually my favorite part. Yeah, this is cool.
What can I add here to make this system faster?
Adding a cache between the server and database could improve speed.
What does this remind you of?
Schrodinger's cat.
All right, give me a band name for this duo.
Golden Stripes.
Nice. Thanks, Gemini.
Cool. So obviously a demo of some of the stuff. The cool thing about this is they actually had a booth at I/O. Did you go to it, Amanda?
Yeah, I went to the booth.
Okay.
Very cool.
Let's do some tests.
There's different levels of using Project Astra. For example, one level is drawing on it, drawing images or drawing, basically, for example, if you have something in your mind that you want to draw out there, you don't know the name of, you could draw it out there and Astra will try to tell you what it is. We also have the feature of showing the camera feature. One person I was in the booth with took their shoe off, put it under the camera, and asked them, what is this?
So it wasn't a prop that was a part of this demo.
No, it was not a prop, but...
You had to make sure it was real, right?
Yeah, you gotta make sure it was real, and it was pretty spot on. But yeah, there was a booth over there, and it was really cool to get to see it in real life.
One of the things that is briefly glanced at, so when we look at AI, right, being able to have context over the text and analyze it with things like code assist, as we mentioned earlier, is one thing. Did you notice that she just put her phone camera and it read the code? That's image processing. That isn't text. That's actually processing a screen image to make generative AI. So and that to me, like rewatching it, was like, wait a second, that isn't just scanning code, putting code into Gemini and just pooping back an answer. This is actually the camera at work doing something live in front of me to generate an answer and a response. That was awesome. And then when I saw the whole, I'm an architecture geek, so when I saw the whole NLP stuff, like, where do I put cache? I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I can't wait for that to be out. So, did you do the demo where you had to put the characters on the table and then you gave them a name? Like, I think you could name it like Tony and like Sarah or something.
Yeah, we did that demo.
So, one thing with Astra, to kind of build on what Amanda's saying, is with Astra, it was also contextually aware. So if you put, like, let's say a picture, a crab, a stuffed toy crab, and you say, this crab is called Tony.
and then you put a bird, like a toy bird, and you say, this bird is called Sarah. When you take them out, say, what's this called? And they say, oh, that's Sarah the bird. And I'm just like, what? Like, how? Huh? I didn't tell you that was a bird. How'd you know that was a bird? Well, I used processing that it's aware of. It was definitely, like, you only had like a minute in there, so there was so many people lined up, but to me, like, stuff like this is where I foresee a lot of adoption. And I know you were mentioning, JC, about like Flash, right? You being able to use things like Flash. Is Flash like a solution to essentially do those lightweight, quick responses? Where do you foresee Flash and kind of taking more of a hold?
So, just to give more background, some of the use cases that we're working on in my company translates to hundreds of millions of calls per month. So, and right now, because we're maximizing quality, we're using Gemini 1.5. But I do expect that in about an hour or whatever, my CFO is gonna call and say, hey, like what's the game plan? What's the long-term game plan? And we're gonna have to start balancing quality and cost. And that's where Gemini Flash comes in. The last 10 months, it has been very difficult for us, that trade-off of how do we keep the highest quality of the output and the highest quality in the reasoning steps that go into generating an output and keeping costs down. That trade-off has been remarkably steep for us to kind of balance. But now with Flash, we see an easy path forward. So the way we're working is we will prioritize Gemini 1.5 and then start doing kind of A/B testing with Gemini Flash. And once we're confident that the data looks pretty much the same, then we'll start switching workloads over to
So at a high level, obviously we're talking Flash and we're also talking 1.5 Pro. I think one thing that I've heard from a few people is like, okay, I don't get it. Why are there so many? What's the difference between Flash, Pro, Nano, all these things? What at a high level, you hear 2 million tokens. Oh, great. What's a token? Can you give us kind of like a high level rundown as like what that is, for maybe the audience who isn't familiar with generative AI and day-to-day?
Yeah, so I guess a good way to think about what a token is like a chunk of a word or a group of characters of a word. That's kind of a good way to think about it. I think at my company I usually say that one token, a good way to think about one token is like approximately 4 characters, give or take, of a piece of word. And one of the reasons why we have so many models is you have to factor in the context window, like how many tokens can you fit into the context window before you send it to Google to get the output back. Or you have to factor in whether or not you're dealing with video or audio or just text. And all of those are decision points that we factor in before deciding which use case we're going to match to a particular model. Right now, to give you an idea, for each use case, we usually test between 8 to 15 different models before we decide on kind of the 2 or 3 we're going to prioritize. And then over time, we start collecting feedback from our user community or from some of the automatic testing that we're doing until we finally achieve kind of the decision that we're going to codify in the backend of which model to use. Now, one last comment. One UX decision that I regret that we did for the products that we're developing internally is when we started this journey, we thought it was a good idea to allow the users to choose which model to use. And now we're trying to walk that back because
always 1.5 Pro.
Yeah, so that we transfer a lot of burden on the user because now they're asking, well, how do we keep up? Like new models start popping up every 2 months or so. So we're trying to walk that back and make those decisions in the back end.
Yeah, no, I think it's huge. And I think one thing you touched on is understanding the input of that data. So I think, and this is where I'm not the most biggest on Gemini or this, but I believe Gemini was, from its creation, was multimodal. So it was supporting images, text, video, right? Being able, granted, different sizes and limitations, but that was from the inception of it, whereas a lot of other models kind of had to kind of add it in over time, right? So we kind of see that. But with that being said, we're sharing all of this data, right? With Google, with other providers, right? What are anyone on the panel? What are some of your considerations? Like we're sending a lot of sensitive data. I know a number of us probably even use it at our work. I've had not coworkers, but people in other industries be banned from using generative AI. I don't know if that's probably the right answer, but reality is say, what are some things that we should consider? Because we should probably be sensitive to what we're feeding into a model, right? And maybe if anyone does know from Google's perspective, like what are some of the things that Google does differently potentially that other providers don't? So does anyone have like a security with generative AI and their thoughts or anything to share?
So my industry is heavily regulated. Right? We have a GDPR frameworks to implement, and then we have country-specific data regulations, and it's a bit of a nightmare. And for us, when we started this generative AI journey, it started with our contractual agreements with our generative AI partners. And what was more difficult was getting folks from the data privacy officer, security, legal, product, engineering, everyone on the same table to agree on the governance framework that we will use moving forward. That was the most difficult part, and it was an internal conversation. Once we were able to lay out kind of the foundations of what we need from a governance point of view, one thing that Google Cloud makes it easier is the enterprise-grade security that just we've come to expect from Vertex AI solutions. Something that caused a bit of confusion internally was this AI Studio API solutions versus Vertex AI solution. That was a bit of a difficult period to navigate, but working with Vertex AI kind of gives us that enterprise-grade assurances that we need. The most difficult part that we have not been able to solve, though, and that I think that generative AI has put on blast, is our internal data hygiene and data management frameworks. And that has nothing to do with generative AI, but the fact that we need to solve that first before we start maximizing the use of generative AI has been a bit of a pain point.
Yeah, you almost have to sanitize what you're feeding in, right?
Yeah.
Anyone else have any thoughts or?
I was just going to add on top of that. So you mentioned, it was funny, why is there so many models? And you mentioned we had, AI Studio, and we have Vertex. There's a running joke at Google, we don't do everything two ways, we don't do it at all. It's kind of true, you probably noticed that. But you made a great point. When you run on Vertex, obviously the data that you're sending up is securely yours and nothing else will be trained on it, so nothing is looking at your data, even the models for it. So that's why Vertex is a great decision. AI Studio has lesser terms as far as that goes, so if you're not concerned about it, it's also way easier to work with because there's less things you have to worry about from a security standpoint. Most enterprises are obviously going to go with Vertex, with AI Studio, which is now probably just available mostly globally. Again, because many countries with data protection laws, we weren't able to meet that criteria for them. But you have to actually look at the terms and conditions and come up with that plan before you do it. Because as you said, and you made a great point, the users, especially if you're letting users push information up, the users don't necessarily know what the rules are, and they'll push things up there, and then you're at risk. One of the things I find with the solutions that we've been building is we make sure we kind of disconnect the user from the solution. We kind of like filter that question on their behalf, whether it's limiting the number of tokens, because you don't need to send 1 million tokens, which is going to cost you more money. We figure out, the average prompt that is successful is like 23 or something words. You don't need to send 1 million tokens all the time for something like that. You don't need to send the entire contents of your drive folders because you can. And again, as a developer, your job is to figure out what's the right solution and how to protect users from making those mistakes.
Yeah.
The one question I'd love to ask have you thought about, with a lot of these apps, about caching the apps and trying to find out if those calls were already made, or if you can answer the question without the AI problem? That's one of the things that we've done, is we actually, getting common questions in, we actually will make sure we don't prompt AI necessarily. We actually log those in a database and actually make those calls to see if someone's already asked that same question. Get it locally versus get it out of the. Have you looked at that for your architectures?
Not yet. One of the announcements I forgot to mention was caching.
Yeah,
Is-
yeah,
That announcement was super interesting. Right now, we have not prioritized looking into that. I am convinced that there's a huge percentage of prompts that we could just cache.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think we're finding that, you know, it's not something that I'm necessarily afraid of. I'm obviously personally not against AI, but it's something that whenever you share that screenshot, you're like, oh, where's this going, right? I mean, how many of us are skeptical of things like Facebook, right? Like, oh, I'm never gonna post on there. I'm not feeding that machine. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, like, these are powerful tools and are probably gonna generate the future. But ultimately, what are we doing to build with these things, and what security practices are we doing? So it's just food for thought. Think about it. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity if it's done right, right? And it's responsible AI. It's kind of like the phrase I've heard around the world.
Also, in terms of security or governance framework, one item that we've been struggling to solve is how do we manage bias, right? Like, we know there's bias embedded in all of these models, and because we're doing research that affects companies' decisions of which products to bring to market, how to target a particular population, like we are still trying to solve how to address the bias issue, and I don't know if you've seen an ad from Unilever. It's very good, and basically it shows what happens when you use image generation with a basic prompt, and it's so evident the bias in the images that are created, and how Unilever, for example, has implemented a beauty governance framework around generating those images before using just kind of the out-of-the-box LLMs. Those questions are hard, and I don't expect we're going to find an answer. That's going to be an ongoing conversation. And to me, it's part of the security framework. It's not just about the data, it's about how do we protect the output that we're generating from amplifying these biases.
Yeah, I mean, biases aside, let's start talking about like development workflows, right? So I know a number of you folks are developers. We've seen things like code assist, and I know Wayne, you mentioned you had you saw it at I/O and you were looking at it, the embedded stuff within Android. But what are some of the thoughts that you know when you see, you know, obviously your brain goes, wow, it can write the code for me, right? But then at the same time, we also have to take a step back and like think about it. So what are some considerations that's from a development perspective when using these tools we should consider?
Yeah, so number one, it's around what are you actually submitting up there, right? And how is it going to be used? So I think about it in terms of, is there anything proprietary actually in what I'm trying to understand? Am I sending any proprietary data? Is it going to be, who is that ultimately going to be shared to if I'm adding it to the model, right? What did I just give my IP to, right? I thought of this thing, or it helped me think of this thing, and now it's for everybody. And sometimes that's a great thing, sometimes it's less than a great thing. And then also, what else is it doing that I didn't ask it to do? So that's some of the things you have to look for. So when it gives you the solution, what else did it, you talked about biases, what other things did it put in there because it felt like that was a good idea, which if you weren't paying attention, it just shoved it in there, and now you're sending analytics to somewhere you never intended.
Yeah, I'd say that hallucinations aren't just on like natural language prompts, they could be in your code. When I was trying to use Code Assist the other day, I remember seeing it try to do import statements in an if condition. Well, yes, you could technically do that in Python. You probably don't want to, you know, if it's for Python developers, you probably don't want to do it every time you iterate over a loop to import a library. Most likely you want to start, you know, take it for a grain of salt as to what data, you recognize you have a lot of data and a lot of hard work and a lot of process kind of back ending your code, but ultimately how do you refine that? So, you know, I would say that those who rely on it, it will be very evident, and those who build with it will become that much stronger. So again, it's kind of like a balance of both.
You know, there's a reason why it's called Code Assist and not doing all the coding for you. You're supposed to use it to help you get closer, but as we know, you can't trust it for everything. So there's an anecdote this morning. We had a little meme going around internally that Gemini returned like 3 or 4 methods for Google Apps Script that didn't exist. And now we would have loved those methods, and we wish they existed, but they didn't. But whatever developer who's going to sit there and debug something that's not real, again, it's code assist, not code complete.
I mean, we're developers. We can't even agree on tabs and spaces. Like, how are we going to rely on? No. Wayne, have you had any opportunities to play with code assist yet, or have you looked at it?
I have. I've actually had it refactor some modules. It seems to do pretty well with their, hey, can you clean this up? Can you put this into, or can you abstract this out into a function so that I can reuse it? I need to move this from reading from an environmental variable to being able to read directly from the environment it's in.
Yeah.
Things like that. And I've also looked at it from a test perspective, right? That seems to be where it has its most benefit for some of the things I've been looking at. I wrote a function, can you test this for me? It's supposed to do this. And then it'll wrap it, tell me if I actually succeeded or not. And everybody loves tests, right? Everybody's favorite thing to do in the world is to write tests.
I have a feeling developers' KPIs of writing tests for their code is going to go through the roof this year because they're just going to crush it with generative AI. No, I mean, it's even that in terms of comments too. The comments aren't always exact and they always don't follow the proper format. But being able to write comments for me of just like what's being imported, it's awesome. It saves so much time for sure.
There are some hallucinations in there as well, where it has come up with some documentation. I'm like, I did what? I don't think that's what I did.
Yeah. Kind of shifting gears, and I know Wayne, you have some experience with like Flutter and stuff. Anything catch your eye in terms of Flutter or just in general, why would I consider like Android versus Flutter? What are some positive cases, obviously, just as a product?
So from a product perspective, being able to, looking at Flutter, obviously it was exciting for me to see that they were putting some effort into Flutter. For a little while there, I had concerns that maybe it just kind of died on the line and wasn't getting the adoption that I hoped it would. Based on what they presented, it seems like they're actually investing in it and they're going to move forward, which is really good. Talking to their product manager, Kevin, it was actually really nice to think about it from the perspective of, I'm going to write it once, and incrementally now, for whatever platform I need to put it on, it's not 2 devs, it's 1.1 devs, right? Like, so I built it for iOS, I want to deploy it on Android, it's 1.1 devs. I'm not spending all that extra time, so especially in the commercial space where everybody wants to quickly get to market in the commercial, the Play Store, App Store, I built it once, a couple of pipeline tweaks, a little bit extra effort, it's now in both places. I really enjoyed that from that perspective, being able to not have to rewrite code just because the user wants to use it in a different place.
Yeah, I mean, I saw there were some enhancements for like WebAssembly as well as like game engine and stuff, so I know you're kind of a WebAssembly guy, but I mean, Flutter is definitely growing. Does anyone here like run Ubuntu on their laptops? I don't know, is this your Linux yet? No, definitely not. No, someone does. See, someone's excited. It's actually interesting. So if you use Ubuntu, like a lot of their apps are being converted over, and Canonical specifically, to using Flutter as a desktop app, which is actually pretty interesting to see. So,
another one, WebOS, like your LG TVs, those are actually Linux apps, so they're actually starting to write those in Flutter as well to make those easily to deploy across your Android Fire TVs and other Android flavors and your WebOS. Build it once, deploy it wherever the hell you want.
I figured I'd show this last thing kind of from a developer perspective. You know, we've been talking about generative AI almost as much as Sundar in the keynote. So let's see if we can kind of kick it off to something a little bit more on the developer side. So this is a lot of the announcements.
Hey, I'm Dan Galpin, and today on the Developer Show, we've got tons of stuff you may or may not have seen from Google I/O. So let's jump in. Android announced new Gemini features in Android Studio, Compose APIs for building adaptive layouts, the Wear OS 5 developer preview, support for business logic sharing with Kotlin multi-platform, Compose shared element transitions and performance improvements, Android 14 for TVs, and Compose for TV Beta 1. More app categories for cars, and Android 15 Beta 2, supporting private space, split-screen app combinations, generated widget previews, and more. Firebase announced Firebase Data Connect, which connects apps to a Postgres database hosted on Cloud SQL. The Firebase GenKit API Integration Framework Beta, the Firebase App Hosting Serverless Solution, with Firebase Remote Config Feature Rollouts Workflow, the new Release Monitoring Dashboard powered by Crashlytics, and Gemini in Firebase for data insights and AI assistance in Crashlytics. We announced the early preview of Gemini Nano in Chrome, the Speculation Rules API for prefetching and pre-rendering of pages in the background, the View Transitions API for multi-page sites, AI-powered insights in the Chrome DevTools console, and more. We announced Gemini 1.5 Flash, our model for high-frequency tasks, upgraded long context window of 2 million tokens for Gemini Pro, the Gemini API Developer Competition, Gemma 2 with class-leading performance and efficiency, PalyGemma, an open vision language model, the LLM comparator in the Responsible Generative AI Toolkit, and more. Flutter announced version 3.22 and Dart 3.4, including support for compiling Flutter web apps to WebAssembly, Dart macros that raise the development abstraction level, new resources for Flutter game developers, the Vertex AI for Firebase Dart SDK, the Impeller Next-Gen rendering engine, now feature complete on Android, and more. Check out all the rest of the Google I/O announcements and updates with over 150 sessions of learning content available on demand.
So that was a lot, and that was a lot in short order. But the one that to me caught my eye personally was Gemini being embedded into Chrome. So how many of you developers love CORS errors when developing web apps? Yeah, it's great, right? We love it, and we always point the finger at the DevOps guy, and then we go back and we say, wait, oh, I forgot to add a location header. So at the end of the day, being able to debug, so let me rephrase, Gemini being embedded, it's getting embedded into developer tools, right? So this means that if you do like inspect, you can start asking questions like, what's going on? Why am I getting a 500 error? What is a 400? What does a 400 mean? Why does this page look funky? Now, I don't know exactly, but the one that they demoed was the CORS error one, which is awesome. I was like, oh, here's a code. On top of it, it didn't just tell you what you should do, it also simulated it and fixed it in your browser real time, saying, if you add this to your JavaScript, it will work. Let's simulate it. And it just works. And you're just like, whoa, okay. Now we're talking about like a developer workflow in a day-to-day. I use Chrome every day, so it's great. Like, woohoo, let's go. The Firebase app hosting. So for those who don't know, Firebase can be expensive, but there's a very generous free tier. I know a lot of my friends who run a lot of their personal blogs on Firebase web hosting for free. Firebase app hosting takes that a step further. So now you can use things like Cloud Run to host and run your application. So within that Firebase console, you can actually run containers inside those environments. So again, one of those things that they're adding, the GenKit as well. GenKit, as we mentioned earlier, talking about things like how to make Gemini and generative AI more accessible, developer kits, things that we can use in our day-to-day in our IDEs and our tools. So find that stuff. Anyone on the panel use Firebase at all, like Crashlytics?
Yeah, it's incorporated in every one of our mobile apps and pretty much every mobile app that my teams have built over the years. It just really helped bring in quickly tools for A/B testing. We use that generally for feature releases, segmenting those. Obviously, the analytics are huge. Being able to quickly deploy GA without much of an effort. It's kind of like, you get that for free just for throwing the SDK in there. Let alone some of the storage, right? The quick storage, being able to just do a POC real quick. Right? I don't have to talk to my back-end guys about, hey, can you set up, hey Joel, can you set up yet another bucket?
Well, I love those requests.
But being able to do, like, hey, I just want to see if this is actually going to work the way I think it's going to work. It did, great. All right, now Joel, I need you to spin me up 3 buckets.
Dang, it's not there yet. So, yeah, I mean, I think as a whole, the one thing I would say, there's a lot of, obviously, AI announcements. I think with each respect, there's a lot of developer announcements as well. So for me, and I don't know about y'all on the panel, but the keynote felt very like AI heavy, but then a lot of the micro sessions that they had afterwards, and they're also recorded by the way, so it's not just in our brains, They shared a lot of the low-level information, so like a lot of the updates within Angular, a lot of the updates within web, a lot of updates within cloud, a lot of updates within workspace as well, right? Gemini obviously as well, dialogues and prompt engineering. In fact, that's something I'll probably send out after this. There's actually a really good doc on how to prompt engineer from the workspace team. It's actually a really nice little book. So it was actually kind of helpful because, when you're using these tools, it isn't so much writing sentences to it. You get better results when you start formulating tighter response or questions to it.
Did you read that document in Gemini and ask it what was the best way to prompt?
How do you think I generated the panel questions today? Cool. I'll kind of close out with some fun and creative stuff. Just, Amanda, you mentioned some of the things earlier about like the videos and the video editing. Let's see if I can go back. Yeah, so actually I mentioned this earlier. It'll be real quick. You can use Gemini to kind of make music. Or rather, AI to make music. This just happens to be an example. You can do this yourself. This isn't something I'm running on my laptop.
This is live.
This is live, yeah. So you can actually have it submit like different tones and make music. So if anyone watched the keynote, there was a crazy dude named Mark Berlier who jumped out of a coffee cup and started dancing and doing weird stuff. Really awesome person. But he used this AI test kitchen to kind of build music dynamically. So when some of you walked in this morning or this afternoon, you heard some music. So I'll just kind of quickly show this. So displays. Oh no, not this again. Nope, it's this way. Come over here. All right, I'm going to mirror. I'm going to launch this AI test kitchen. So you can actually just literally write a sentence, but more importantly, you just kind of go into DJ mode and say, sure, let's see how this sounds. Upbeat jam band synth pads. And again, so now we're just going to tune the model up, so we're going to add a lot more synth pads. I can't promise this sounds good. Okay, so let's start adding a little bit more jam band, a little bit less synth pads. Okay. Hey, that's actually better than I thought it would sound. So again, the minds of the creatives are getting, we're seeing even if you follow music at all, like you're even seeing rappers accuse each other of using AI to write the lyrics for them. I'm not going to name rappers, but if you've been following the hip hop industry, there's been a big rap battle lately, right? At a certain point, we're going to start questioning, well, who wrote that for you? Who did this? How was that music generated? And obviously, it's not always a negative connotation, but it can be positive, right? Can this be used to kind of iterate, get that spark, get that kick to make something that you want to like, hey, this sounds good, okay, cool, let me add in some drums. Okay, cool. What else can I add to this? We're seeing even, hopefully, this plays, Donald Glover.
Well, I've been interested in AI for a couple of years now. We got in contact with some of the people at Google and they had been working on something at their own. So we're all meeting here at Yoga Farms to make a short film.
The core technology is Google DeepMind's generative video model that has been trained to convert input text into output video.
It looks good.
We are able to bring ideas to life that were otherwise not possible. We can visualize things on a time scale that's 10 or 100 times faster than before.
When you're shooting, you can't really iterate as much as you wish. And so we've been hearing the feedback that it allows for like more optionality, more iteration, more improvisation.
But that's what's cool about it, is like you can make a mistake faster. That's all you really want at the end of the day. At least in art, it's just to make mistakes fast.
So using Gemini's multimodal capabilities to optimize the model training process, VO is able to better capture the nuance from prompts. So this includes cinematic techniques and visual effects, giving you total creative control.
Everybody's going to become a director, and everybody should be a director. Because at the heart of all of this is just storytelling. The closer we are to being able to tell each other our stories, the more we'll understand each other.
These models are really enabling us to be more creative and to share that creativity with each other.
I think at the end of the day, stuff like this is actually just kind of cool because again, this is now transcending past like, I know, I recognize that an audience here is most likely technologists, but hey, some of us are creatives. We like to make music. We like to do art, right? I mean, I don't know. I know you did a few of these, Amanda. Do you have any thoughts or anything like to share? What do you see kind of in this world?
Just to add on to that, in the AI box at Google I/O, there was also, because we see right here, VO is the AI film generator. We also have AI picture generator. So it's just, like Joel was saying, that we are all developers here and we see AI as helping us, technically and on all of that, but it's nice and refreshing to see that AI is slowly getting incorporated in everyday use, everyday life, and this is only just the beginning of it, so it's just gonna grow and get better and better. I don't know if you guys want to add on to it, but.
So, I will actually argue that something similar to what we saw with using generative AI to create videos, something similar is happening to how we create digital products for our users. Like, one of the things that I'm most excited about is that I feel that the tech industry keeps cutting down the time it takes to go from an idea to showing something to the users, getting feedback loop, and then iterating. All of these tools are only kind of shortening even more that cycle. And at least the products that we've been developing the last year in my company, that has been the wow factor. We go out of a meeting, we kind of put some mock-ups together, whether it's using Flutter or writing kind of the code using code assist.
Or something, yeah.
And by the next day, we can actually show something and collect feedback, or sometimes even put it in the hands of the users. That has been the most exciting part. So I see a parallel of, I think Danny Glover said, you can make mistakes faster.
Yeah.
The same things is happening with how we design products, and that's something that
I think the biggest thing to that is like when we can show an idea to your end customer is like, oh wow, that's how it's gonna look like. Or no, I don't like that, but that was fast. Can you try it again? Like, I still remember the one time I think Wayne, you were demoing the new website. You were adding a logo, and everyone's like, how long will it take? How many weeks? It's done.
0.3 seconds.
So again, being able to show it and then have a commentary, maybe it'll make people say, no, that's not how we should build it. But you started a conversation, and then you failed, and you can build on that.
And quickly doing things like, okay, we didn't like how that looked, just adjusting the prompt just slightly to change like a vector image that you've got there to tweak it based on the instant feedback, and having it real time change it in front of you and then display it in your IDE and go, is this what you meant?
So, yeah, I was just going to add from the workspace side, there's a product called AppSheet. Has everybody ever heard of AppSheet? So, okay, homework assignment for a lot of folks. The neat thing about it, AppSheet is it allows you to build basically any type of CRUD solution from a template or from a spreadsheet seamlessly. We recently just put an AI front end on it, so what you actually do is give a prompt to what application you want and build the entire application for you, which is pretty neat. So again, they're not overly sophisticated applications, but again, if you're doing a basic, database with some workflows and some UI functionality, all you do is give it a prompt and the application comes out of it.
Yeah, so I mean, like basically being able to like modernize some of your, for example, if you want to sort a long extensive spreadsheet, you can kind of essentially have it write that code for you. Yeah, that's awesome. I guess, we're almost at time, so I kind of just want to maybe, large question here. So, IL 2025, Cloud Next 2025, the industry is moving in all sorts of directions. In the next year, what is something that, and this is obviously an open question for anyone on the panel, what are some things that you want to see in technology grow and adapt that you foresee, whether it be from a developer perspective, from a creative perspective? We're obviously talking about a lot of Gemini and things here, but reality, we're here a year from now. What are some things you want to see in the industry grow? Anyone?
From an AI model perspective, with my product hat on, I want to hear a little bit more whys the AIs are doing things, right? So we trust, we give them prompts, it brings things back. But starting to get, hey, here's what you asked for, and this is why I gave it to you this way. So so that it can help you refine those prompts. That's something I hope happens in the models of the next year.
So at least on my end, I guess two things. We're still expecting the next flagship model, and I think we're going to be caught in that cycle for a couple of years. So I do expect to see more announcements on flagship models. But the thing that I'm hoping to see more is more tooling to actually develop the user experiences where they don't realize they're interacting with AI. Like right now, there's just too much emphasis on the users of, oh, which model am I using? Which prompt do I need to submit? And all of that to me translates into friction that we need to remove from the user experience. And I expect to see more developer tooling to help us craft those user experiences. If you see how Agent Builder, aka, what was the previous name? Search and Conversations, aka something else. When you see how that product has evolved in the last 10 months, that's kind of the experience that I'm referring to. Yeah, we need to get to a place where users just don't realize they're working with AI. It's just things just work.
Built in.
Yeah.
I was going to add on to that. You mentioned kind of the evolution. I started building the content for my session back in March, and we were limited at the time to 2,000, to the 4,800 tokens, whatever it was. There was only so many things we could do, and by the time it came around 3 months later to actually deliver the session, half of the things we wrote were obsolete already. It was moving that fast. It was moving that much further. And so this is really only the beginning of the journey, and it's exponentially growing fast. I think what we really need to do as developers is really start using our imagination and also not try to, as you mentioned, wait for that perfect model. I think we need to start building now and be prepared to actually have some things go obsolete, but also watch it evolve. I think my two takeaways, the first one is we still need user trust. A lot of folks are skeptical. You mentioned some folks are a little eerie about certain things. You probably heard the tremendous snafu we had last week where we told you how to keep your cheese from slipping off pizza by using non-toxic glue. Did you see that, Ron? That was actually one of it. Gemini literally said use non-toxic glue. So we went, so getting users' trust is important, and there are some wrinkles to roll out, right? These models have to evolve. The other thing I'd like to see in 25 is I'd like to see actually, you guys make great points about the value, to see these actually in implementation. There's a lot of things that we're showing that could be phenomenal, but I want to see the results when actually folks like you guys build them and actually prove that value and do those models out.
Agreeing with all of you guys, but the biggest thing for me is definitely the user experience. I'd like that to be a little more better, and like JC said, I would like to be able to use AI without knowing I'm using AI. I think that's definitely something that I would like to see in 2025.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, kind of to round it out was, I think I personally sit deeper in the stack, so like I'm at the network level, at the monitoring level, at like the infrastructure level, being able to see the applications there, right? So today we're all, as anyone here is in the DevOps space, we're writing, Terraform code, and it's cool and it's fine, but it's like at the same time, even DevOps people hate Terraform. So how do we essentially get to a point where you can declare what you want? Like one of the models that I've always used in my career has always been, how can we take a developer's declaration to create the infrastructure they want? A developer's not going to know ARM CPU from an Intel-based CPU, AMD 64, but if you tell them, hey, I need 4 cores and 16 gigs of RAM, and figure it out, DevOps, or figure it out, pipeline, how can we use that to kind of build that model on top of that to either create that infrastructure, provide strong guidance into building that infrastructure, or even being able to use it from a developer perspective, saying, hey, I got an alert at 2 in the morning that my application's not working. What's wrong? Insert AI here. It can say, hey, that alarm fired because of 2 things. Your system restarted, it had a memory leak, and here are your logs. Do you have any other questions? When was the last deployment?
Go back to sleep.
Go back to sleep. Yeah, exactly. Please fix my code so I can go back to sleep. Sure, fixing it now. Like, right? So seeing how you can get integrated at a deeper level, at a deeper stack. Right now, we're obviously very consumer facing. Like, what can my phone do? What can my chat app do? What can my, thing? But seeing these things be integrated deeper in the stack, respectfully, privately, and securely, would be very interesting to see. I'm really eager to see some of that growth there. So. Cool. So that was I/O Extended Chicago. So I want to give a warm round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much for coming. I recognize we have about 5 or 6 minutes, but does anyone have any questions either for the panelists? I'm not sure if anyone on the call.
There's questions online.
There's one question online that asked about Mint during the Flutter thing. When you guys were talking Flutter, they said, how about Mint?
Mint.
I don't know what that is, so.
I don't know what that is either. I wish we had Jorge here for that. I bet you Jorge would know. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have Mint. It's like a library, I'm assuming.
Making sure I'm not reading it wrong. Yeah, I read it correctly. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, no idea.
Sorry.
Sorry. How about Mint?
Yeah, how about Mint? Yeah, we'll see if we can get an answer for you, and maybe kind of share it out after the event. We'll see if we can reach out there. Any questions in the audience? Are we all going to start implementing AI? No, just kidding. Cool. Question of Ben.
So we know how there's like a lot of technological advancements happening, also OpenAI and Google now.
Yep.
So is there any chance of collaboration between both of them, or is Google trying to stay competitive and stay like ahead in the race?
So I'll repeat the question just for the sake of the audience on the stream. But we see there's a bunch of AI companies. OpenAI was mentioned. Google was mentioned. Do we foresee a world where there's more collaboration as things are rapidly innovating, or do we see kind of a diverse, my AI versus your AI? Is that a proper wisdom? Cool. Anyone? Any thoughts on that?
I'm out of that.
Sorry. That's fine.
So I guess we are already seeing a little bit. So one of the reasons why I like Google's approach to AI is this idea of through the model garden, you get access to not just first-party models, but also third-party models. And you already see a bit of, Google invested a little bit of money in Anthropic. The OpenAI question is a tough one though. So I like Google's approach to AI from an open kind of perspective, and you can see that taking shape through the model garden. A company like Ipsos, we currently work with Anthropic, OpenAI, Mistral, and Google. And because we're serving clients globally, we need that flexibility to go back and forth across models. And it has been a challenge to integrate our solutions with the Google stack and Anthropic. It's easy. With OpenAI, it has been a bit of a challenge because of this kind of, lack of collaboration, if you will. So, I guess it's a non-answer, but I do see a little bit of collaboration on the Google side.
Yeah. My take on it, and again, I may run in GDG, but I'm definitely not employed by Google, nor am I sponsored by Google. My take on it is ultimately it's going to be up to the consumers how they implement it, right? Naturally, you'll see the ones that want to collaborate, and you'll see the ones that don't. And generally speaking, that's for us as consumers, as developers, as users to make a decision as to what we use. At the end of the day, there's nothing stopping us from using both, right? We can technically use both. If when OpenAI is better at something, which it has a lot of great advantages over things like Gemini in certain areas, use it. If Gemini is better for certain things, maybe regulated data, use it there. Obviously, this goes back to the question of how the models, the security practices you do around it, can you do things like that? But it's ultimately with us, kind of as developers or engineers or product, to figure out what that looks like, right? And I think that's probably how it's going to be for a while.
That's a yes and to that.
Yeah.
The way cloud is used today, right? So there are some major cloud providers, but you have these smaller niche companies that build on top of those to provide an extended value. I see that's where AI is probably going to go, right? Gemini is the base. they understand their market a little bit better than the broader scope of what Google's trying to accomplish. Maybe whether it be in medical, whether it be in chat, if you're going to throw that on top of there and repackage it for you so you don't have to rebuild that yourself. And I think you're going to see a few more of those. You'll see the big guys start to consolidate that are just doing general AI, but I see a little bit more growth in the specifics than the niche markets.
Yeah. Cool. Did that answer? Cool. Anyone else? Cool. That's fine. That's good. Well, hey, let's give one last round of applause for ourselves, for the panelists. Thank you so much for being here. So we don't have a formal event announced for next month, but we will probably share one soon. We want to kind of build on this. They're just kind of in the skunk works right now to kind of give you all some ideas as to what's coming up. There is an event series known as Build with AI. We're looking at how that can be here. Some places run it as like a 5-week course where there's like an instructor talking about different concepts of AI, right? It's still very early, but that's something that we're kind of have a pulse on, and we'll be sure to share with the community. But the best way to know about it, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Meetup, follow us on the, what is it called then? That's what they call it?
Not publicly.
It's a GDG community developer site. Follow us there. You'll see our events live. Honestly, these events can't be done without y'all. I mean, we do this, obviously, blood, sweat, and tears go into this, but y'all make it worth it. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for helping make sure that I don't have to carry all that pizza down. So we hope to see you next month. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Stop.
Yeah, stop.